It was a quiet and sunny morning in Greentown. Detective Alex was in his small office at the police station. He was drinking his hot coffee and reading the newspaper. Greentown was always peaceful, and there were not many crimes. As Alex turned the page of the newspaper, the door of the station opened quickly. A woman ran inside. She looked very worried and was breathing fast. "Detective. Help me, please," the woman said loudly. Alex stood up and walked to her. "Please calm down, ma'am." "What happened?" he asked kindly. The woman tried to catch her breath. Then she said, "My diamond necklace is gone. It's missing." "Okay, ma'am, let's sit down." "What is your name?" Alex asked. "My name is Mrs. Brown. I live at 12 Rose Street," she replied. "All right, Mrs. Brown. Can you tell me everything?" "Start from the beginning," Alex said. Mrs. Brown sat down on the chair. She held her bag tightly. "This morning, I was at home. I put my diamond necklace on the table in the living room. I went to the kitchen to make tea. When I came back, the necklace was gone. Did you see anyone near your house this morning?" Alex asked. Mrs. Brown shook her head. "No, but the window in the living room was open. I think someone came in through the window," she said. Alex took out his notebook and started writing. "Don't worry, Mrs. Brown. I will help you. I will find your necklace." Detective Alex went to Mrs. Brown's house. It was a small house with a nice garden. The living room was neat and clean. "Where did you leave the necklace?" Alex asked. "On that table," Mrs. Brown said, pointing to a small wooden table near the window. Alex walked to the table and looked around. He saw a small footprint on the floor near the window. "Do you have children, Mrs. Brown?" Alex asked. "No, I live alone," she replied. Alex wrote "small footprint" in his notebook. Then he looked at the open window. He went outside to check the area. In the garden, Alex noticed a broken flower pot under the window. He bent down and saw something red caught on the sharp edge of the pot. It was a small piece of cloth. "Mrs. Brown, do you know anyone who wears red clothes often?" Alex asked. Mrs. Brown thought for a moment. Then she said, "Yes, my neighbor's son, Tim. He always wears a red hoodie. But Tim is a good boy. I don't think he would steal anything." Alex nodded. "Let's talk to Tim. He might have seen something," he said. Detective Alex walked to Tim's house. Tim was playing with his dog in the garden. He was wearing a red hoodie. "Hello, Tim. I am Detective Alex. Can I talk to you for a moment?" Alex asked. Tim looked surprised. Okay," he said nervously. "Did you see anything strange near Mrs. Brown's house this morning?" Alex asked. Tim shook his head. "No, I didn't see anything," he said, looking at the ground. Alex noticed that Tim looked nervous. "That's a nice hoodie you have. Did you tear it recently?" Alex asked. Tim's face turned red. "No, it's fine," he said quickly. "Can I check your hoodie?" Alex asked. Tim hesitated but took off his hoodie. There was a small tear on the sleeve. The tear matched the red cloth Alex found in the garden. Tim, are you sure you didn't take Mrs. Brown's necklace? Alex asked gently. Tim started to cry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal it. I just wanted to see it because it was so shiny, he said. Where is the necklace now? Alex asked. Tim pointed to a tree in his garden. I hid it there, he said. Alex walked to the tree. He looked carefully and found the necklace hanging on a branch. He took it and showed it to Tim. Is this the necklace you took? Alex asked. Tim nodded. Yes, but I'm really sorry. I won't do it again, he said. Alex looked at Tim. Stealing is wrong, Tim. You must always be honest, he said. I understand, detective. I will never do this again, Tim said. Alex smiled. Good. Now, let's give the necklace back to Mrs. Brown, he said. Alex and Tim went to Mrs. Brown's house. Alex gave the necklace back to her. Thank you so much, Detective Alex, Mrs. Brown said happily. Alex looked at Tim. Do you have something to say to Mrs. Brown? He asked. Tim looked at Mrs. Brown and said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Brown. I took your necklace, but I didn't want to hurt you. I will never do it again. Mrs. Brown smiled. It's okay, Tim. Thank you for telling the truth. I forgive you, she said. Tim felt better, and Mrs. Brown was happy to have her necklace back. Detective Alex went back to the police station. He wrote in his notebook, case closed. Greentown is peaceful again.